Your mother never told you what really happened the day you were born. Be ready for what? Archangel Michael says, do not look away from this moment because the doorway you have avoided for years is opening inside your memory and will not close again. The first sound is not a cry but a hush that covers the hospital corridor like a sheet pulled over a secret. Your life begins under a red night light that stains the ceiling like a warning. A name tag sits on your wrist, but it hides a different story in the space beneath the plastic. The nurse who touches your forehead whispers a vow that no one hears. She signs a document with steady hands while her eyes shake like a lantern in wind. She has already chosen you before the ink dries. A storm sits outside the delivery ward and presses its fingers against the window. The power flickers and returns like a heartbeat that refuses to stop. A shadow in a dark coat steps out of the elevator and leaves no footprint on the floor. Your mother breathes your name into the room and it softens the beeping machines. She smells the newness of your skin and understands only love, not danger. She does not see the second files that sit under the first ones on the metal tray. The doctor holds a smile that never reaches his eyes. He worked all night and yet his hands are too calm for the chaos around him. He knows which drawer holds the real papers and which drawer will be shown to your family. A visitor arrives who does not sign the guest book. He stands near the window and stares at the wing across the courtyard as if studying a map. He holds a small silver key and turns it with his thumb like a prayer he no longer believes. Two babies share the same first cry, then one falls silent. The nurse counts 10 fingers and 10 toes and hears an extra thing that is not a sound, a pull in the air like a thread tugged by a hidden hand. She decides which crib moves closer to the door. Your first blanket carries the scent of laundry soap and a trace of rain. Your first photograph catches the red light and gives your eyes a shine that looks older than minutes. The camera flash swallows the shape of the stranger near the window. A power outage rolls across the ward like a slow wave. In that soft dark the nurse moves with purpose, and the stranger opens the door with the silver key. The doctor checks the hallway and pretends not to notice. The generator hums back to life and everything looks normal again. Your mother smiles and thanks the room for returning the light. The nurse changes your blanket and tucks a folded paper inside the seam. You are carried to the nursery and placed near a glass wall where a blue sticker marks the pane. The sticker looks like a star that someone tried to peel and could not. Behind that mark the stranger lays a small black envelope on the ledge and disappears. Morning becomes visiting hours and the hallway fills with flowers and low voices. A volunteer arranges gift baskets and ignores the envelope because it is small and plain. The nurse waits for a moment when no one is looking. A woman in a gray coat mistakes your crib for another and frowns at the name card. She steps back with a shy smile and never realizes that her error tells a truth that the room will not admit. Your breath fogs the glass and writes nothing anyone can read. The nurse slides the black envelope under the mattress so it will not blow away when the door opens. She writes a number on your chart that does not match any code in the hospital manual. She touches the blue sticker on the glass and nods to herself. Your first night ends with quiet footsteps and the soft click of that silver key in a lock no one else uses. The stranger returns and stands over your crib as if measuring light. He takes nothing and leaves nothing except the certainty that he is not finished. Years pass like pages turned by a steady hand. You grow into rooms that never quite fit, and dreams that carry thunder even on clear days. Your mother smiles every time you ask about the day you were born, then changes the subject with careful grace. There is a box in the closet that holds your first blanket. The seam is heavier where the folded paper sleeps like a breath held too long. Your mother keeps that blanket near and never tells herself why. A winter evening arrives when a letter without a stamp appears under the door. Your name rests on the front in handwriting that stops and starts like someone learning to write again after a long silence. The letter is unopened for 3 days, though it stares at you from the kitchen table. Inside the letter lives a single sentence that tastes like metal. The words tell you where to go and what to bring and when to arrive. The ink is faded as if it traveled a long road to find your hands. You do not ask your mother because the air in the house tightens whenever the topic touches birth or hospitals or storms. You place the letter under your pillow and sleep with your head near the secret. In your dream, a nurse counts to 10 and then keeps counting. Archangel Michael says, "The truth waits at the center of fear like the pit of a fruit that needs the knife." The address on the letter leads you to a building with a green door that leans slightly to the left. The hallway beyond smells like paper and lemon cleaner and old rain. A clock ticks without numbers as if time is being kept by memory alone. You meet a woman in a navy sweater who looks at you the way a lighthouse looks at water. She does not ask your name because she already knows it. She brings out a metal tin with a blue sticker on the lid. The sticker matches the one on the glass in the hospital nursery. The tin is warm despite the cold room, as if it has been held recently. Inside is a folded paper sealed with thread and the corner of a small black envelope. You pull the thread and read the first note the nurse ever wrote. It is a vow to protect you from a trade that was arranged in shadows. It carries the names of 2 men and a time that matches the hour of the power outage. The nurse writes about a file that did not belong to you but was placed on your chart to redirect any eyes that might look too closely. She writes about the stranger with the silver key and the hush that fell over the ward when the generator died. She writes about a second crib and a small scar on a left wrist not yours. Inside the tin sits a second note written by the stranger. His words move like footsteps on wet stone, steady but unsure. He says he once served a quiet circle that shaped inheritances and altered beginnings for families who paid in silence. He says he saw your mother and could not complete the exchange. He says he left you where love would choose you, and he placed a key near your life so you could open the locked door when you were ready. He ends with a line that feels like a hand hovering near your shoulder. There is a third note from the doctor who wore the calm hands. He confesses that he signed forms he cannot bear to remember. He says he kept one document and stored it under a false name that points to a storage unit by the river. The storage unit sits between a fishing supply shop and a bakery that smells like morning. It houses boxes with dates written in black marker. One box carries your birth date and a blue star next to it. You cut the tape and stare at the papers the way someone stares at a mirror that shows a second room behind the glass. There are photos of the nursery and camera logs and a guest ledger with an empty line where a signature should live. There is also a chain with a locket that opens without a clasp. The locket holds a strand of hair and a scrap of blanket under glass. The color matches your first blanket. The edge of the scrap has a seam that hides a missing piece. You return home with the tin, the notes, and the locket. Your mother waits at the table with the winter light on her face like a veil. She does not speak at first because the world seems to be holding its breath. You place the blanket on the table and pull at the thick seam. The folded paper inside is small and stubborn. When it opens, it shows a photo of the nurse and your mother smiling at something just beyond the frame. On the back of the photo, the nurse has written a date and a message that says the storm passed but left a mark that looks like a path. The mark is not visible in the picture, but it is real in the room. Your mother touches the photo with 2 fingers as if blessing it. She begins to tell the story she kept to protect you. She speaks of a knock that came at midnight before your birth. A man with a gentle voice explained a program that would give your child a future beyond anything she could imagine. She signed nothing that night because something in her refused the offer. The man returned after you were born when the storm cut the lights. The nurse stepped between them and guided your crib to the safe side of the glass. The stranger with the silver key raised his hands and stopped the exchange. He told the doctor to stand down and promised to carry the sin himself. He stayed by the window until the generator brought the lights back and then left the black envelope. Your mother says she kept the truth because she feared the circle that changed beginnings for money. She feared they would come back for you. She chose silence the way someone chooses armor. She says the nurse moved away 2 weeks later and never returned to the hospital. A month after that, the doctor resigned and opened a small practice far from the city. Years later, a letter arrived with no return address, and inside it a single instruction to keep the blanket close. You sit in that quiet and feel the room tilt as if the house is drifting into a new shape. The notes on the table draw lines between the nurse, the stranger, and the doctor until a map forms where a story used to live. The locket on the table swings slightly as if a small wind has passed through the kitchen. Archangel Michael says, "Truth does not erase love, but it changes the direction of every step you take after it." You look at the locket and understand that it was meant to open a road rather than a memory. You wear it and feel a weight lift from your chest like a lock clicking open by itself. Your mother exhale turns into a soft laugh that sounds like rain after heat. You return to the storage unit and study the guest ledger again. The empty line where the signature should be is not empty after all. Under the light a faint impression appears, pressed into the paper by a firm hand. The imprint reads a name that you have never heard before but feel as if it belongs at the edge of your life. It points to a small town by the river where the bakery scent travels 2 streets over. It points to a cemetery with a stone that holds the nurse's last name. You bring flowers to that stone and read the dates twice to let your heart catch up. A metal plaque near the ground bears a symbol that matches the blue sticker from the glass. Beneath the plaque lies a small locked box with room for a single key. Your fingers remember the silver glint from the first pages of your life. The key turns without resistance as if it has been waiting for nothing else. Inside the box rests a final letter written in a careful hand that grew old but never shaky. The nurse writes that she watched over you for one night and promised to watch over your truth for the rest of her life. She writes that the stranger returned 3 times to make sure you were safe, and each time he left with fewer shadows around his eyes. She writes that the doctor sent copies of the forms to a lawyer who stored them under seal. She includes a deed to a small house near the river that once belonged to her sister. She writes that it is yours if you want it and that it will keep the circle from claiming you because you now stand on a line of guardians. She writes that a light above the sink will flicker when a warning is near. You take the deed and feel the ground under your feet become steady. The house smells like lavender and old books and a little like lemon cleaner, like the hallway where you first held the tin. The light above the sink hums once like a welcome. In the attic you find a trunk with a label that bears your birth date again. Inside are clippings about children given new beginnings through quiet purchases. The articles never say the word you keep tasting in your mouth, but they circle it like a hawk around a field. There is also a ledger with columns of names and numbers and a symbol in the margins. The symbol is the blue star beside your date. The ledger skips your line and moves to the next as if someone refused to write you under debt. You step onto the back porch and breathe in the river air and feel a calm that does not erase anger but reshapes it into resolve. Your mother arrives with tea and looks at the trees and smiles as if she already knew you would choose this place. She says she will sleep here tonight because the house feels like a promise kept. Night falls across the river and the porch light carves a safe circle in the dark. You place the notes in a frame and set them on the mantel like 2 lanterns and a compass. The locket warms against your skin like a steady ember. The circle that bought beginnings loses one more thread because yours will not be pulled. The ledger will never hold your name. The truth sits at your table and eats with you and your mother and does not ask permission to stay. In the weeks that follow you move through the city as if wearing new eyes. You recognize the doors that hide in plain sight and the hands that hold keys to rooms without windows. You learn the calm ways to close a gap where harm might slip through. A message reaches you in early spring from the doctor with the steady hands. He writes that he has told the authorities everything and that new cases are opening like locked rooms. He writes that he sleeps for the first time in years. The stranger writes a final note as the river unfurls into summer. He says that he has sent his key to a ministry that breaks circles the way the sun breaks fog. He says that he wants no thanks and that the night by the window remains the only decent act in a life that forgot itself. You stand in the doorway of the house by the river and feel the nurse's vow move across the floorboards like a quiet breeze. You touch the blue star on the tin and the seam of the blanket that carried the folded paper. You place both in a chest by the bed and lock it with the silver key and keep the key on a chain next to the locket. Your mother sits on the porch and tells stories that start with laughter and end with warmth instead of fear. She has given you the last piece now. The house holds it with the tenderness of hands that have learned to protect without squeezing. The storm that marked your beginning left a path, and that path has led you here. Every hush, every flicker, every unseen hand has brought you to a place that does not bend to secret trades. Your name fits you like a garment that was cut for your shape and no one else. You sleep and dream of a nursery window without shadows. The generator hums and stays steady. The stranger stands outside the glass and turns away because he is no longer needed. Morning touches the river and the light above the sink glows like a quiet greeting. You brew tea and open the door and let the air fill the rooms. The house keeps its promise and you keep yours. The truth of your birth does not end the story. It begins the story that belongs only to you. It is not built on fear but on choice and the steady care of people who stepped between you and a night that tried to rewrite your first breath. You carry that care forward like a lantern that never burns out. You walk streets that once felt crooked and now feel honest. You stand taller because the ground under your feet finally knows your name. Archangel Michael says, "The day you were born did not steal your future, it forged your courage, and now that courage calls you by your true beginning." Your mother never told you because she held the door until you were strong enough to open it without breaking. She held the letter, the blanket, the memory of the storm, and the sound of your first cry. She held them until you arrived at this exact light. You step outside and feel the morning land on your shoulders like a mantle that fits. The river nods and moves on with a patience that matches your own. The sky looks new because you are new. There is no more blue sticker to mark a hidden pane of glass. The mark lives in your chest as a star that points home. The key hangs around your neck and shines not as a weapon but as a witness to a night that could not unmake you. You walk back inside and begin the day that follows truth. You turn the pages that come next and find no missing lines. You keep moving because the story moves with you now, honest, steady, awake. You reach for the door and pause, not from fear but from gratitude. Every person who kept you safe is present in the air. The nurse, the stranger, the doctor, your mother, the light across the river, the hush that became a vow. The house by the river holds in its walls the first quiet night you did not get to keep. It gives that night back to you so you can sleep without watchfulness. It tells you that your beginning has finally caught up with your present. The story leaves no jagged edges now. It lives with you like a riverbed that knows every turn. It carries you without noise into the day that waits. You breathe and the room breathes with you. You step forward and the floor carries your weight without strain. You own your life and every door in it. You close this page not as an ending but as a seal placed on a chest that holds proof. You know where you came from and who chose you and what tried to change you and failed. You carry that knowledge like a calm flame that will not be blown out. The river keeps moving and you keep moving and the house holds steady. The sky clears the way for new work that is yours alone. The truth stands at your back like a guardian you will never outgrow. You go on. The days begin to stretch into a season of repairs that do not involve hammers. You move through the rooms of the river house and listen to the boards speak their soft language. Every sound becomes a map that leads to a place inside you that has finished hiding. You start with the smallest things because the smallest things always tell the truth. A loose hinge, a rattling vent, a light that hums a little louder when the air shifts. The work feels like a ritual that teaches your hands what safety means in wood and wire. Your mother catalogs photographs without labels and gives them names that match the new story. She places the smiling faces in the right rooms and the difficult nights in a box that no longer burns. She breathes better when each page turns without smoke. You visit the lawyer the doctor trusted and place the tin on the table like a bell that calls a meeting. The lawyer reads slowly as if the paper asks to be seen rather than skimmed. When he finishes, he closes his eyes and says the circle is more threadbare than it thinks. You agree to give a statement that is not a confession but a declaration of origin. You speak without shaking because the words belong to you now. The room holds your voice the way a harbor holds a boat through changing tides. A few more families arrive with envelopes that have lived in drawers. Some carry blue stickers they never understood. Some bring photographs with shadows they could not name until this week. You do not promise to save anyone because promises like that become nets that tangle the heart. You promise to stand with them while the door opens and the air changes. The promise fits because it is honest and light enough to carry. Archangel Michael says, "Courage multiplies when it is shared at a kitchen table and poured like tea without ceremony." The authorities open boxes that were never meant to see daylight. They find ledgers and keys and maps that try to fold themselves shut. They do not look away because too many eyes are watching now. The stranger writes one more letter from a town that lives near silence. He says he answered questions until his throat went dry and then he kept answering in writing. He says he is going to plant fruit trees where concrete used to be. You read that line twice and feel the odd mercy of regeneration in a place where ruin once sat like a throne. Your mother taps the paper and nods without speaking. The house seems to soften at the edges as if wood can exhale. You begin to record your own account not for the court but for the years that will follow. 3 pages become 30 without strain. The sentences carry more light than weight because your purpose has changed from defense to creation. Neighbors come by with bread and small talk and a knowing that does not pry. They tell you who built the dock and who mends roofs and who can be trusted with a spare key. Each name enters your pocket like a smooth stone. You return to the cemetery and thank the nurse again because gratitude is a kind of tending. You tell her the porch light has stayed steady for 6 nights in a row. You tell her the blue star on the tin does not feel like a warning anymore. A letter arrives addressed to your mother from a hand she recognizes but never met. It is from the doctor's wife who learned the long version of the short story she lived beside. She writes that shame is leaving their house like smoke from a window that finally opens. You are invited to speak to a small room of people who heal beginnings for a living. They do not ask for inspiration. They ask for detail because detail turns into steps that can be taken on Mondays. You describe the hush, the red light, the power flicker, the silver key. You describe the way fear and love can exist in the same room and fight without noise. You describe the seam in a blanket and how a single fold can carry a future. Afterward you stand outside and let the air soak through your shirt. A nurse from that room approaches with eyes that have seen too much and still keep seeing. She says she will start writing the numbers the way your nurse did when something feels wrong. You do not start a movement because movements begin themselves when enough chairs are pulled close. You simply keep telling the truth in rooms that can hold it. The truth picks up tools and builds its own scaffolding. Your mother finds a ribbon you wore at 1 month old and ties it to a nail near the sink. The ribbon fades a little more each day but keeps its shape. She says the color reminds her that softness is not a risk. There are nights when the river roars and the wind lowers like a shoulder against the trees. On those nights you sit on the floor and read the notes again. You do it not to reopen the wound but to honor the scar as proof of healing. The circle that once traded beginnings loses the appetite that kept it fed. A judge signs orders that turn dark rooms into archives. People who once carried keys switch to carrying lists of names to call and apologies to make. You help one family find a birth photograph that had been filed under a wrong date on purpose. The photo returns to their table like a missing tooth returned to a smile. Their child laughs at their own baby face and the laugh becomes medicine. You keep a journal of small victories because the body needs a record of balance. A door that no longer sticks. A call that is returned. A night that ends without dreaming of sirens. Archangel Michael says, every quiet repair is a trumpet in a world that learned to mishear silence as surrender. You find an old cassette player in the attic and a box of tapes the nurse recorded as lessons to herself. She speaks about noticing the way a room shifts when harm enters and how to become a wall without becoming a weapon. You copy her words to digital so her voice can travel forward with clarity. The house by the river develops a reputation for good coffee and true words. A teacher stops by when the school day ends and leaves with a plan to watch the sign-out book more carefully. A pastor visits without vestments and goes home with a list of counselors who charge nothing when nothing is available. You keep the locket on its chain and add the silver key beside it. One cool weight and one warmer weight balance the space above your heartbeat. They clink softly when you laugh and remind you that protection can sound like music. There is a day when the sky goes the color of pewter and the world feels pre-storm again. You prepare without panic because preparation is no longer fear in costume. You check batteries, you stock water, you leave a light on in the hall. When the wind arrives, you sit with your mother on the floor and tell a story that begins with the day after you were born. You describe the people who stepped up rather than aside. You describe the moment the generator hummed and how that hum has become your favorite note. The storm passes and leaves the smell of wet leaves and relief. The porch light flickers once and then holds steady. You step outside and feel the air bless your skin with ordinary calm. Someone leaves a blue stickered jar on your steps with wildflowers inside. No note, just color and intention. You place it near the tin so the old symbol can learn a new meaning. You travel to the city where the elevator opened and the stranger stepped out in his dark coat. The hospital has changed paint and signage, but the bones are the same. You stand in the courtyard and honor the timeline without living in it.